Earlier today, Trump signed an executive order containing a revised version of his Muslim ban, which supposedly wasn't a Muslim ban, even though numerous people in the Trump administration, including Trump himself, called it a Muslim ban. It applied only to selected majority Muslim countries and specifically exempted religious minorities in those countries, i.e., non-Muslims. This new order allows current visa holders and legal permanent residents to enter the U.S. and also contains exceptions for those already granted asylum or refugee status, but bars everyone else from the affected countries from obtaining new visas for 3 months. The 6 countries named in the executive order are Sudan, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. A 7th country included in the original executive order, Iraq, was left out with the explanation that Iraqi officials will be working with the United States to improve the vetting of those who apply for visas from that country. The new order also suspends the refugee program for 4 months and directs that the total number of refugees accepted by the U.S. per year be cut by more than half. The idea is that this Muslim ban, which they won't call a Muslim ban, even though that's exactly what it is, will hold up in court, unlike the previous version, which was repeatedly struck down. But despite the new allowances for current visa holders and already approved refugees, this new executive order has the same fundamental problem as its predecessor. There is no valid reason for it to exist. The Trump administration released a fact sheet ahead of the signing of the order that explains, quote, "The executive order signed on March 6, 2017 allows for the proper review and establishment of standards to prevent terrorist or criminal infiltration by foreign nationals. But none of the fatal terrorist attacks committed in the U.S. since 9/11 have been perpetrated by people from any of those 6 countries. In fact, none of the hijackers who committed the 9/11 attacks were from any of those 6 countries. 1 was from Lebanon, 1 was from Egypt, 2 were from the UAE, and 15 were from Saudi Arabia, which is thought to be the largest state sponsor of international terrorism in the world, yet wasn't included in the executive order, which is supposedly designed to protect Americans from international terrorism. And even more importantly, the danger posed to Americans by terrorism is minuscule compared to other threats. Since 9/11, nearly 130 times as many Americans have been killed by firearms as by acts of terrorism. There are over 30,000 Americans who die from gun-related causes every year. The total number of people who died from terrorist attacks in the U.S. last year was 66. Even if we limit our discussion to terrorism and ignore other causes of death, Islamist terrorism is less common in the United States than terrorism committed by right-wing extremists. And the overwhelming majority of Islamist terrorist attacks that are committed in the United States are perpetrated by citizens or permanent residents, not by immigrants or refugees. So if terrorism in general is not a serious threat to people living in the United States, and if more acts of terrorism are committed by right-wing extremists than by Islamist extremists in the United States, and if the overwhelming majority of Islamist terrorist attacks that are committed in the United States are committed by citizens or legal residents rather than immigrants or refugees, and if no one has been killed in the United States since 9/11 in an act of terrorism perpetrated by anyone from any of those 6 countries named in the executive order, what possible reason could there be for issuing this executive order in the first place? Racism. If it's supposed to protect us from foreign terrorism, why doesn't it apply to countries where terrorists who have actually killed Americans have come from? Or to countries that are thought to be large-scale sponsors of terrorism? Racism! If it's not a Muslim ban, why does it apply only to select Muslim-majority countries? Religious intolerance! And if the Trump administration has evidence that people from the 6 countries named in this executive order do pose a threat to American lives, why has this evidence not been made public? Or at least shared with the courts when the previous version of the order was challenged? Because it's not based on evidence, it's based on ignorant reactionary fear-mongering. All right, look, I'm done. The point is this: the threat from Islamist terrorism within the U.S. is grossly exaggerated. Americans are far more likely to kill each other than to be killed in terrorist attacks committed by people from another country. By continuing to pursue this Muslim ban, Trump is doing the same thing that he has always done, the thing that he did during the campaign, the thing that he has done since he assumed the presidency, the only thing that he apparently knows how to do as a politician: pandering to fearful, poorly informed, angry white voters by vilifying foreigners and reinforcing white supremacy. The new Muslim ban may be superficially different from the original, but it's the same in all the ways that matter. It's discriminatory, it's unwarranted, and it's incompatible with religious pluralism, inclusion, and equality under the law, which are cherished American values, or so I'm told. The original version of this order was struck down emphatically by the courts, and so should this one be. The President of the United States has made it clear that he isn't going to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution or uphold the principles upon which our society is theoretically built, but someone has to.